Hey, it's Scott from theproductionacademy.com. This is the third video in our mini-series about working as an audio engineer in the live music industry. In this video, I'm just going to kind of run through some of the jobs that audio engineers have, both on touring and non-touring side of the live music scene. I'm a touring engineer. I'm a front of house touring engineer, so I'll talk a lot about the touring jobs that exist in audio, but I will cover some of the other jobs that exist locally. When I say locally, I mean non-touring jobs, and we'll get to that later on. But if you didn't see the first two videos in this series last week, I talked about my path into live music and working in audio, some of the pitfalls I had, some of the struggles, and some of the things I did to overcome those. And then the week before, I shared a video with some interviews of some friends and colleagues talking about how they got into the industry and getting their first job. So really want to talk about, just like excited to talk about how to get in and some of the jobs that exist in the industry. I know it's an important topic for a lot of you out there. It can seem very opaque and it can seem difficult to get that first job, but once you're in and you start working and meeting people, your career can grow, and there are a lot of opportunities available in live music, which is one of the reasons I love working in it. There's a lot of shows happening, a lot of touring happening, and a lot of opportunities. So first of all, I want to talk about some of the jobs that exist on the touring side of things. This is what I do. I'm a touring front of house audio engineer, meaning I mix the sound for the audience on tour. I will work for one specific artist, band, and I'll go on tour with them, and I will mix their show so that the audience can hear a good mix of what's happening on stage, and I'll try to bring the artist's vision of how the sound should be to the audience every night. I really enjoy doing this job. It's really satisfying for me. I enjoy thinking about the music and how it all fits together. But there are a ton of other audio positions on tours, especially when you get up to the larger levels. So I want to kind of run through it, starting with small side of touring and get up to the big side of touring. So when bands start to tour and they're small bands, we use the term baby bands sometimes, but when bands are small and just starting to go on tour, often the very first position they're going to hire is an audio engineer. And if they're doing clubs, say 500 or 600 or less, usually it's just one audio engineer running the sound for the front of house and the monitors on stage. And this is quite often the very first position that an artist will fill on tour. It's just good for an artist when they're touring to have someone interact with the local audio crew at the venue so that the artist can just go on stage and not have to worry about talking about what microphones they need or trying to explain any special mix notes. It's just very comforting for an artist so that to have an engineer with them to kind of handle the sound and be in charge of that. So even in bands touring around in vans, doing small gigs, they'll hire a front of house audio engineer. Then they'll sometimes hire a tour manager or maybe another audio engineer, a monitor engineer, if they're starting to do venues that are more than, say, around 600 capacity. And sometimes those jobs can be done by the same person. If you want to make yourself more hireable as an audio engineer, learning how to tour manage can be a good thing. There are a lot of front of house / tour managing jobs out there. But when a band is doing well enough to play venues that are larger than around 600 capacity, having that other audio engineer, the monitor engineer, is really important. And quite often a band will hire a monitor engineer as well, just to make sure that it's consistent from night to night and make sure that when they hit the stage, everything's going to sound good and they're not going to be up there not being able to hear what they need to hear to do a good show. This is the monitor engineer. That job has changed a bit in the past 10 to 15 years, just with so many people going to in-ear monitors. So many artists these days will just rely so much on their in-ears, and the mixing skills for that for the monitor engineer, it's different than it used to be. It used to be floor wedges on the stage and some side fills, and the monitor engineer's job really was to make sure that everyone could hear themselves on stage, but mostly worrying about feedback with the microphones and the wedges all interacting with each other. But with in-ears, it's a totally different game. You can really get detailed mixes. There's panning involved. You can use compression more and use EQ differently. So that job has evolved in the past 10 to 15 years for sure. So these positions, the front of house and monitor engineer, these are the two audio positions that are most common for working directly for an artist. Because the artist is going to want that consistent person at front of house to translate their vision of the sound to the audience, and they're also going to want someone consistent on the monitors to make sure that they, when they get on stage, they're going to hear exactly what they need to hear. And this consistency is really what we're shooting for in live music production all the time. Having consistent personnel really helps an artist feel comfortable. And then beyond that, carrying audio consoles with you can even enhance that consistency. So when I tour a lot, I'll have a front of house console with me, and the monitor engineer will have their console with them, and we'll usually carry all the mics and mic stands and cabling and all that sort of thing too, so that we make sure when we show up at a venue, it's all the same as it always is, and we make sure that we have our good, consistent show that we've built. So when we get to that point when we're carrying our own consoles and cabling and all that sort of thing, we call that a control package. And that really means that it's the audio that we can drive the PA with and drive the in-ears with, and really the important things to be consistent every night. But we're not carrying PA systems at this point. And for those bands that are playing from like I said, the 500 capacity up around 2,000 or 3,000 capacity venues, this is kind of a normal way to operate, having a control package and two audio engineers working directly for the artist. And you can get really good consistency with this setup. So there are variables in there. Some people will carry a front of house engineer but not a monitor engineer, or they'll have both engineers but not carry consoles, or some bands will just carry a monitor engineer and a monitor console and not have a front of house engineer. So there are variables in there for sure, but for a lot of bands, those two engineers plus some audio gear, some kind of control package is really common. I've done a lot of touring on this level. It's fun. I kind of like mixing those size venues, and you don't quite get up into some of the issues that you have doing arenas. So when you do get up into the bigger venues, more than 2,000 or 3,000 cap, you start to carry more audio gear with you. It starts to make sense to carry PA systems with you, full PA systems with you. And when you get to that point, you're going to need more audio help. So the next position, and actually all the other audio positions that you start to find at that level, those engineers, those audio techs, will tend to work for the audio company that provides the audio gear. So if we're going out on tour and we need a control package, that's going to come from an audio provider, someone that like a sound company that will rent out gear for tours, and they'll supply audio techs if necessary, if we get up into loading a PA system in and out every day, or if there's a band that has just a ton of channels and wireless, having a third audio engineer on tour, an audio tech, can be very helpful. So this is where the distinction comes in a lot, is if you're working directly for the artist or working for the audio company. And when you get up into working for an audio company, the game changes a little bit. When you work directly for an artist like I do, you're on their schedule. If they go in the studio for 6 months to work on a record, you're not going to have any shows going. So I cultivate these relationships with these artists. I have a handful of artists that I work for, so I'm pretty busy between all of them, but it's not quite the same as working directly for an audio company. Big audio companies have so much going on. They'll not only have the tours, but they'll also have local work as well. Stuff that they'll be doing shows around the region where they exist, and they'll be providing audio gear for festivals or for other tours or for graduations or whatever needs audio gear. So there is a lot more opportunity for more work if you're working for directly for an audio company. So when we start to get into the bigger tours, like the really big tours, full arena and stadium tours, the audio team grows pretty big. You're carrying all your PA system with you. Sometimes there will even be an A system and a B system, so while you're doing one show, the other PA system will be getting set up in the next stadium, and you kind of leapfrog the system. When you get up in that kind of level, you're having a whole team of audio engineers on tour. Not only the front of house engineer and the monitor engineer, but a technician for each of those, someone on stage doing the patching, making sure all the lines are run correctly. You can have a dedicated wireless RF technician, someone just managing all the radio frequencies. You could have someone just dealing with the audio networking between all the consoles. There's a lot of positions that you can get into that get pretty specialized when you get up into that big kind of touring level. Now, again, almost all these positions, except for the front of house and monitor engineer, are really going to be hired through the audio company that provides the audio gear. So if you're looking to get into touring on a big level, this is something I suggest. I suggest you start making connections with audio companies, working for audio companies, trying to see how the big tours operate. Being in the shop while the gear is getting prepped is a great way to see how the big audio setups are put together. And going out as an audio technician on tour can be a great way to work into that level of touring. If you're more interested in working directly for artists, starting small can be a good way to work your way up. A lot of that is just getting lucky, working with someone who gets famous, who is having a good career themselves. That can help you they can give you a path into a bigger career in audio as well. So this kind of gets us into the non-touring side of things as well. Like I said, working for an audio company can be a great way to have both touring work and non-touring work, because when you go off tour, audio companies are going to have more shows going on than just the touring that they're providing the gear for. So that's a good way to bridge the gap if you desire. So another option for local work is actually working directly for a music venue. Now, this is something I've done a lot throughout my career, both in Chicago, where I used to live, and here in New York City. And I find it to be pretty fun because you get to see different music every night. And one of the things I like best is you actually get to know the system that you're working on really well. So one of the venues I work at has a huge L-acoustics install, and it's been great for me to actually dig through and really get to know the software and how the whole thing is set up. So it's a good way to develop some skills for sure. Now, one thing about working directly for music venues is the money can be a little light. Most bars and venues really try to keep costs low, keep employee costs low. So there's one thing to consider. Of course, it's always different anywhere you go, and some venues pay decently, some don't, but it's one thing to think about. Touring rates tend to be higher than actually working locally at a venue. But if you want to work locally as an audio engineer, there are some options to maybe get up to a better pay scale that don't involve live music. This is where we get into corporate work. There are a lot of audio companies that will provide audio for weddings and corporate events and that sort of thing. The pay does tend to get higher for these type of gigs. So that is something to think about, to consider. And even beyond that, like a lot of hotels will have audio visual departments and need engineers, or resorts, or all kinds of places that have audio systems in general and need audio engineers. That can be another way to get local work as an audio engineer. So there are options outside of live music that can pay pretty well if you get the right gigs. So it's something to consider. Outside of live music, of course, I like working. The reason I do this job in the first place is to mix music. So for me, it's all about the touring and working with specific artists. That's really what I love doing. But there are options for sure out there in audio. Another good option, even though I know it's not working in live music, is actually recording. I've worked as a recording engineer a bunch in my career. I enjoy it. I like having variety in my work, so it's fun to actually do some touring stuff and recording. I don't do that much anymore, but if you're starting out and you want to develop both sides of things, it can be a great way to meet artists and work with artists and develop those relationships. So it's definitely worth exploring all these. We have touring positions at front of house and monitors, working directly for artists, and then also other audio positions through the audio companies, as working as audio techs, either patching or wireless technician or audio networking. Those are positions are hired through the audio provider. Locally, we have working for venues, we have working corporate events, or working as an audio technician for any other venue that has an audio system and has a microphone and a speaker. They're going to need an audio technician. So looking at all these options is good. I've done almost everything. So you don't necessarily only have to pick one and go with it. You can dabble and see what works for you and see what works for the lifestyle that you want to build with this. And that's essentially what choosing which job you choose is really going to be dependent on on the lifestyle that you're trying to build. For me, I love the travel, so touring makes sense. Other people, doesn't make sense if you have people that have kids or other obligations around where they live, but still want to be involved in live music. That's where those local options come in. And even beyond these positions, there are other options if you want to be around live music and around live audio. You could work directly for an audio manufacturer, a speaker company, or a microphone company. That could be in a marketing department, or it could be in R&D. There are a lot of options there. You could work in television. I know audio engineers that do television shows that really love that style of work. I really hope this is all helpful in laying out some of the jobs that exist on tour and locally for audio engineers dealing with live music. Like I said, corporate work or television or recording studios are also a good way to supplement your income if you don't want to be touring exclusively or working in live music venues exclusively. If you're trying to get into it, just go start talking to people. I know it's hard sometimes, but call audio companies, bug them, tell them that you want to go start working patching stages. Call local venues, talk to the audio engineers there, try to get your foot in the door. Talk to musicians who are going on tour, talk to other touring people. It's all about making those human connections that can get you into the jobs in the industry. So really remember that. And of course, like always, be nice to people. That's going to get you further along in your career than anything else. But hopefully this video has been helpful in some way. Of course, please leave a comment or make a suggestion with anything else below this video if you have any other ideas. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel, also right below this video, if you haven't done so already. That helps us out, and it gets you the content we come out with right away when we post it. So we're gonna have a lot more coming right here on this channel, right here on this blog in the near future. So please stay tuned, and until next week, have a good weekend, and I will see you then. Bye.